Hi, my name is Bryce Hinshaw. The date is July 4th, 2018. I'll be presenting highlights from my research paper. My paper is approximately 1,500 words long, and it's about popular music and media and how it's kind of misappropriated Native American culture. I'll be using a total of three sources, which are cited in MLA format. My first source is The Indigenous Music of Turtle Island by Dr. Christina Giacona, specifically Chapter 6. The second source is Celluloid Indians, Native Americans in Film by Jacqueline Fitzpatrick. And I thought it was interesting with that book, with a lot of the other videos we've also watched through this class, and how it's interesting how Native Americans have been misrepresented in film. And the third source is the Tribe Called Wannabe playing Indian in America and Europe. And I just found it interesting how this culture has spread to Europe as well. This, cliche Hollywood Indian, how that's kind of spread to Europe also. The title of my paper is Native American Culture in Popular Music and Media. I chose this because I think you have to sort of include film as well as music. I think film inspired a lot of the music that came out about Native Americans, and I feel as though they kind of go both. They're hand in hand. The introduction talks about how throughout the history of the U.S., one thing that's remained relatively similar throughout history is the depiction of Native Americans in popular media. These cliches such as like Indian giver, savages or warriors or nobles, and also how they only live in the Southwest with Plains Indian style regalia. Um, my thesis states all the terms that I'll be defining, such as singing red face, racial antipathy, idealized sympathy, cultural misappropriation, cultural confusion, blackface minstrelsy, and playing Indian. Um, I basically state that by defining these terms and explaining their origins, one can better understand the struggle that Native Americans have gone through and continue to go through today. My first topic covers singing red face, blackface minstrelsy, and idealized sympathy. The first book I reference is The Indigenous Music of Turtle Island. And the first term is singing red face. And I go from a direct quote from the chapter 6, and it's singing red face occurs when a non-native person takes on the racial archetype of a Native American character through song. And basically how this kind of promotes misinformation with the racial slurs, misinformation, misappropriation, and unoriginal music, as in the music that they believe the Indians actually make. And I remember earlier in the class how these beats are not original, as in they would go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and how that's not really accurate at all. And next I speak about what minstrel shows were and how they were one of the first forms of entertainment in the U.S. How they included singing, acting, dancing, comedic sketches, and it kind of later had a formed into another genre of minstrelsy, which was blackface minstrelsy. Um, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's still a minstrelsy show, but in blackface, and it promotes misinformation and a false insight of Black culture. Also providing the audience a safe look inside of this culture. And yes, it was played by white actors. Next, I define idealized sympathy. To better understand idealized sympathy, I reference the indigenous music of Turtle Island once again. In chapter 6, when Marvin Rainwater created the song The Pale Faced Indian, he spoke about struggles of the Cherokee people assimilating into white American culture. After these broken treaties, the Trail of Tears, and even how the Cherokees remained very cooperative in this process as well. They were still treated that way. And the song still spoke about how he will always, still be red, and he'll be red until the day he dies, and how proud he is to be a Cherokee. Um, and the song was then covered by English musician Don Fardin, who changed the name of the song to Indian Reservation. In Fardin's rendition, he uses the phrases and words like lived and died and return, stuff like that. And this insinuates that the Cherokees died, but, they didn't. And despite the Trail of Tears and how devastating that was to them, they're still alive and well and were even thriving. So this, sort of explains idealized sympathy, because, it looks as if Fardin kind of changed the song to garner sympathy for a cause, and to like sell more records, and comes off as extremely disingenuous, and it explains it perfectly. Um, Next topic, I kind of cover the terms of cultural misappropriation and cultural confusion. And to better understand these terms, I reference the book Celluloid Indians, Native Americans in Film. And like singing, film also plays a huge role in cultural misappropriation and confusion. So to talk about the Hollywood Indian and how they've kind of created like a really cliche uh, Indian. So I talked about that earlier in the intro. It's how they all live in the Southwest. They wear plains regalia. They have these noble warriors, certain stuff like that. I also talked about how many actors who are white simply pretended to be Native Americans in real life as well. It ties into playing Indian, which I will cover later. I believe that these actors participated in cultural misappropriation because they took these certain aspects of Native American culture and turned it into a spectacle and cliches that have lasted throughout the entire history of film in the U.S. Another term of cultural confusion, where once again I cite the indigenous music of Turtle Island, basically saying that there isn't a readily abundance of accurate information available about Native American people, or really just that it's easier to watch a movie and believe these cliches. That actually it's a lot easier to believe these cliches and actually do your research and have accurate information. So people kind of get confused because they believe in what they see in the movies, and it creates and spreads the misinformation. Next, I talk about racial antipathy, and I use a sports example when talking about just talking about antipathy. Like someone has antipathy towards somebody who, like OU versus Texas. Texans have antipathy towards Sooners, and Sooners have antipathy towards Longhorns. Same with Lakers and Celtics, or Yankees versus Red Sox. However, to understand racial antipathy, I kind of use this song, Squaw on the Warpath. Basically, how a Native American male goes out and he's drinking all night, and he comes home to a wife. She cleans the teepee, she does all that stuff, and it kind of creates, racial antipathy towards the Native American male in the song. And it also uses racial slurs like squaw to end on warpath and everything like that. It just kind of creates these little digs and antipathy towards Native American culture inadvertently. The last term is playing Indian. I referenced the article, The Tribe Called Wannabe, Playing Indian in America and Europe, by Raina Green. I explained that this blackface minstrelsy is similar, but only this time, it's red face. And I also talked about the Hollywood Indian again, and have all these cliches and how the white actors could play Indian, and also how it's spread through Europe, which is extremely interesting to me. I didn't know that before this, and that was very interesting. And I kind of leave off with a few questions that I believe can be explained by all of these various terms that I defined. So the questions are, why are Europeans and Americans obsessed with Native American culture, yet at the same time they don't care that it isn't accurate? So could Americans have created this false culture and simply fallen in love with that illusion? And they like um, the cliche Hollywood Indian, and they don't really care about the actual story, um, about the culture. And I said these are all important questions to ask oneself, and and that these terms that I described earlier can help guide one to an answer, because I don't really believe that there's a definitive answer. But if one were to read this paper, they might have a better understanding of where these terms come from and how one can answer these questions. Thank you.